Hi, Lisa, and welcome to your second of the three mentoring sessions.
Awesome.
To start, once again, I would like to acknowledge our country. We express our gratitude to the Kaurna peoples for their continuous care of this ancient country, for thousands of generations, and for the sharing of this land that was never ceded. We recognise and respect the wisdom of Kaurna elders, past, present, and those to come, and extend this to all First Nations people and their living cultures. We walk softly alongside First Nations peoples as allies committed to seeking guidance, listening with purpose, and acting with courage in our future together. Always was, always will be. So, before we look at your observation task, I want to do another sanctuary check-in with you, Lisa. So, how are you feeling today?
I think I'm feeling comfortable.
Comfortable. Even in these chairs, that's nice to
Well,
hear.
these chairs are not terribly comfortable, but, aside from that.
That's great, Lisa. And what do you hope to achieve today?
Well, I reckon it would be good to achieve a really good mentoring session today after our last session. I was feeling really invigorated by that, I guess. And so as a result of that, I'm looking forward to this session to see what this brings.
Fabulous. That's always good to hear. And who can help you with that?
I would say you.
Yeah.
And me.
Excellent. Okay.
So, how are you feeling today?
Well, Lisa, I'm feeling excited to see how your week has been since our last session. I was really impressed with what we got through last session and some of your responses. So yeah, I'm just really excited.
Awesome. So, what do you hope to achieve today?
Well, another great mentoring session and to finish Module 3 recordings for my Cert 4 in training and assessing.
Awesome.
That would be good.
Awesome. And who might help you with that?
Lisa the Great. So, Lisa, how have you been feeling with work since we last met?
I think I've become more aware of myself during shifts, especially those moments when customers start to escalate. But also, I think on the flip side of that is recognising that things that might escalate might not be as much. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Where they could have escalated, but they're not because you're kind of,
You're
reflecting on
catching
that.
it before the trigger sets in.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, you mentioned that you've been more aware of yourself during shifts, especially when customers are starting to escalate. Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice in the house?
Well, recently, I guess, when a customer started becoming, a bit upset and agitated, I noticed myself feeling a bit more tense and, wanting to be able to respond quickly to that. So instead of reacting straight away, I kind of just took a breath and paused before actually saying anything, Yeah.
Wow. And what difference did that pause make?
Oh, look, I reckon it helped me stay calm. I lowered my voice and slowed my speech down and reminded myself to follow the behaviour support plan rather than just kind of rushing in, which is you want to kind of de-escalate stuff quickly and, so not responding in that way.
And when you do lower your voice and slow your speech, you almost go into a hypnotic. You can actually do hypnotherapy, I think. That's amazing, and that awareness is really important. So, what did you do differently after that?
I focused on listening instead of, sort of bouncing in and interrupting.
To try and help fix the situation.
Yeah. So I think, I acknowledged how the customer was feeling in that moment and kind of gave them space rather than, trying to get in there and control the situation and make sure, it turns out right. It was just allowing the space to feel the emotion, I guess, and responding to that appropriately.
Awesome. And how did that affect the outcome?
Look, I think the customer settled more quickly. And I think that happened because I stayed calm. And as a result of that, the situation didn't escalate any further. And I guess I felt, it gives you a level of confidence in reference to how you've kind of handled it. And so I think, helping them stay calm or get back to that state and feeling that they've been heard is really important.
That's a great example of self-regulation and reflective practice in action, Lisa. Good job. So how did you feel afterwards compared to similar situations in the past?
I reckon I felt more in control and probably less critical of myself because you always go there and criticise yourself. I knew I'd handled it in a more professional way instead of just reacting emotionally.
Excellent. And Lisa, that level of self-awareness is a strong indicator of growth within your practice. So you should be really pleased with yourself. It's also really encouraging to hear. So awareness is actually the first step to change before skills even come into it. So you'll have heard things like saying that, if you've got a bad habit, you have to appreciate the fact that you've got a bad habit and admit to it before you can actually get help to cure that bad habit.
That makes sense.
So I think now's a really good time to watch this video that I've got for you today. So if you just have a look at the screen.
So listening is not the act of hearing the words spoken. It is the art of understanding the meaning behind those words. When people say you're not listening to me, simply parse back the words that they were said. Congratulations, your ears work. That is the act of listening. But the art of listening is creating an environment in which the other person feels heard. That's what I said there. The other person is an emotional word, feels, right? I want to know that you've heard the words. I want to feel heard, feel seen, feel understood. And that is a learnable, practicable skill. So there are many parts of it. It's things like replacing judgment with curiosity, right? That's a hard thing to do. We're a pretty judgy group, right? Be curious about someone has a point of view. It's creating a safe space for someone to, as my friend Dia Kanu calls it, empty the bucket. So even if we find what they're saying just reprehensible, right? You're never going to be able to actually have dialogue until at least one of the parties gets the opportunity to say everything without judgment. And I actually call it emptying the bucket. And once somebody feels like they've completely said everything, then they're more apt to listen to you. But usually what we do is we defend, or we litigate, or we interrupt. We point out flaws in logic, which is frustrating. And when you point out some flaws in somebody's logic, because we're all imperfect when we speak, we all choose the wrong words at various times. And that's not what I meant. You know what I meant is what we have to say. Well, what if you know what you meant? Why don't you say what you meant? You can see how it's spirals. But if when somebody says something, there's a really easy way to do things like, go on. Tell me more. What else? I think you're talking. And you go quiet and fill the space. Tell me more. Go on. And eventually, it's all out. And then there's a safe space for you to respond or to express yourself in a constructive way. But that's correct. We do not teach listening. And listening is the way to create, to build trust with someone. You make someone feel heard, they'll trust you. It is the way to find common ground in opposition. In business, but in more complicated cases, in national politics or in global politics or in war. You know, why did Bill Urey, William Urey, who wrote Getting to Yes, he talks about the same thing. He goes, we have talk shows, but we don't listen shows. He says we have peace talks, but what we really need is peace listens. You know, and he at the table of at the highest levels of peace negotiations, he said people start demanding what they want, and that's how the negotiations begin. Nobody starts by saying, "So tell me why you came here." There's a great documentary that I recommend to learn this called "White Right Meeting the Enemy" by Dia Khan. In a nutshell, Dia is a Muslim woman living in the UK who was trolled by white supremacists to the point where the police got involved because they was at risk to stay away from open windows. That's how bad it got. The way Dia responded was by moving to the United States and going to meet the white supremacists. And she brought her camera, and you can see it all happen in this documentary. And basically, she gave them a safe space to feel heard. Now, that sounds mad. Like, why should she give them a safe space to feel heard? They should give her a safe space. Yeah, fine, good. You know, it's never going to happen. Sometimes with these white supremacists, give them a safe space to feel heard. Extreme listening. And I say it's extreme because, I mean, they hate her, you know, disagree with her. They want her on the planet. And she lets them empty their bucket, as she calls it, and then conversation begins. And because they feel heard, they start to trust her. And as they start to trust her, she becomes a friend. And then it creates this paradox where I'm supposed to hate this woman, but I trust her as a friend. And what you see is one by one, these white supremacists, these diehard white supremacists, start dropping out of the movement because they can no longer reconcile their beliefs with reality. And if it can happen in this extreme environment, then it can happen anywhere. And all that is required for us to cross political divides or, you know, agreements at work and things like that is one of the parties has to learn how to listen. It doesn't even require both parties to learn the skill. That's the amazing thing. And it's one of the most remarkable skills that anyone can learn, the power of listening. Yeah. So the documentary is a great extreme example of what it can do.
So that documentary then just gave me goosebumps. Like that's quite an amazing
and I believe in that a lot of people in these situations are just people who haven't ever felt heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they just have to voice.
Yeah. You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me.
Yeah.
You're not listening to me. Yeah.
So just to recap in this short video, thought leader Simon Sinek explains that listening goes far beyond simply hearing words. It's about actively understanding the meaning, emotions, and intent behind what someone says. True listening creates connection, trust, and deeper communication. And I'm sure you've done the same thing with your daughter where you go, where they tell you haven't heard anything they've been saying, and you go, yes, I did, blah, 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 blah. That's not listening. That's, as he said, your ears are working, great. So the key messages include listening versus hearing. Hearing is just receiving sounds. Listening means engaging with what's said and trying to understand the person's experience. Effective listening requires focus, attention, and intentionally setting aside judgment or assumptions, which can sometimes be quite hard to do. Real listening, what does it look like? It includes making eye contact, using non-verbal cues to show you've tuned in, and reflecting or paraphrasing to check understanding. Good listeners ask open-ended questions. For example, how did that feel? What happened next? To encourage a deeper sharing. And why does all this matter? People don't need to be agreed with to feel heard, as with that documentary. They need to feel understood. So when someone truly listens, it can build trust, strengthen relationships, and make others feel valued and respected. Listening, so a key takeaway, listening is not passive. It's an active skill of understanding and connection.
Yeah.
It's essential for effective communication, whether in personal relationships or leadership roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did it feel being more aware of your responses?
I suppose at first it might have felt a little bit uncomfortable, but you know, I think then you feel a bit more in control. You know, like yeah,
Yep, sure. And whenever you do new things, you feel sort of outside your comfort zone.
yeah, absolutely.
But that makes a lot of sense. And when we slow ourselves down, we often feel more grounded. And customers usually respond to that. They sort of get this positive aura coming off you. So let's now talk about the observation task that, remember, I asked you to do in session one. So tell me about the situation you observed, Lisa.
Well, I watched a senior member, like a staff member in the house, supporting a customer who was just starting to get a bit agitated.
Okay, so can you take your time and walk me through what you noticed? So right from the very start, what was happening just before you noticed the agitation building?
Well, I guess it kind of started when the customer was asked to stop watching TV. And then moved to the table for dinner, which, yeah, I wouldn't even be happy with that. But anyway, that routine changed slightly because dinner was running late, and I could see the customer was just starting to get restless. You know, like you've taken me away from the TV, put me here ready for dinner, and dinner's late. So, yeah.
And I was watching the program, and it was my favourite program, and great observation, Lisa.
Yeah.
Routine changes are often a common trigger. So what were the early signs that you noticed? What did the agitation look like before it fully escalated?
Well, I think at first they were just kind of fidgeting and, you know, tapping their hand on the couch and, you know, just kind of repeatedly saying, when's dinner, when's dinner? And then their voice started getting louder. And then from there they kind of stood up and started pacing, you know, as I would too. Like you break someone's attention from one thing to the next, and then next minute you're still waiting. So you told me it was going to be here, you know, so...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you remember years ago when we had money and you'd see a guy waiting in the queue at the bank, and the longer he waited, the more he'd rattle the coins in his pocket, like another sign.
Yeah, I usually turn my face to my watch. It's like...
Yes.
Yeah.
But the bank teller won't care these days.
No.
So you noticed escalation cues. That's excellent. Fidgeting, repeated questioning, pacing, voice volume increasing, they're all signs of that. And if you miss those signs, the escalation just goes straight ahead. So now tell me what the senior staff member did first. What was their immediate response to the customer and this?
Well, I didn't see them kind of jump straight into giving instructions.
Okay, good.
They approached slowly, you know, kept their body language all relaxed and everything. And as they were doing that, they spoke in a calm voice as well. And they didn't stand too close either, you know, sort of gave the customer some space. They sort of stayed at the side of the customer rather than facing them head on, because I think that can be a little sort of confrontational. So, yeah.
Perfect word for that. Yes, absolutely. Confrontational. You're in my space, threatening, sort of absolutely. So that's a really positive and strong positive behaviour support approach, Lisa. Calm presence, safe distance, non-threatening posture. Now, did they say anything specific?
Yeah, I think they said something like, I can see that you're getting frustrated. Dinner is running a little late tonight, so you're safe. Let's just take a minute, kind of thing. So just calmly, yeah.
Now, do you realise what you actually did there? Because you slowed your pace of conversation and you lowered your voice exactly like you were in the situation
Yeah.
where it was escalating.
Yeah.
That's just perfect, Lisa.
Cool.
Excellent. So they, as you did, acknowledged emotion and gave reassurance without arguing or correcting or trying to fix the problem. So tell me what happened after that.
Well, the customer kind of, he said, "Oh, I'm not waiting. This is stupid," and raised their voice more. The senior staff members sort of didn't react strongly to that, but they kept their voice low and they said, "It's okay to feel annoyed. We can wait here or we can go for a short walk outside. Which would you prefer?" So, yeah, giving the choice.
Excellent. Offering choices is another key positive behaviour support strategy. So giving control back in a safe way. So you're actually giving him the power to choose and feel comfortable with his decision. So how did the customer respond to being offered choices?
Well, they still looked upset, but they stopped pacing for a minute and kind of looked at the staff member, and then they just said, "Walk."
Perfect. So they made the choice to go for a walk.
Yeah.
So the choice interrupted the escalation, basically, and helped the customer shift towards a safer option. Really good outcome. So what did the staff member do next?
They sort of confirmed it calmly. "Okay, we'll go for a short walk then." They didn't rush the customer. They waited for them to get the shoes on and everything, and then just kept a calm tone like the whole time.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And that's really important. Not rushing can stop the situation from reigniting. So did you notice anything about the environment or what the staff member did to reduce triggers?
Yeah, they did ask another staff member to lower the noise in the lounge room and just to make sure the other customers were settled as well. They also moved the customer away from that crowded space because it can get a little overwhelming. So doing that rather than instead of trying to manage it in the middle of all of that. So remove them from that
Yeah,
chaotic distraction, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. With too many sensory
Yeah, sensory,
overload
yeah,
happening. Yeah, absolutely. Great. So they used teamwork to help reduce the stimulation around the customer. That's just awesome. So what did you notice about the staff members' communication style throughout the whole episode?
They spoke slowly, like they slowed down their speech and they didn't argue. They didn't kind of, agitate further by going calm down or stop, because no one wants to be told those sorts. It sounds like condescending. So they just kept validating feelings and repeating options.
Excellent. So that's a really mature communication style. Now, I want you to think about the documentation side now. Did you see how they happened to record the incident and what they actually did to record it?
Yeah, so after the customer settled, they wrote notes down straight away.
Mhm.
Not a big paragraph or anything, but just dot points at first.
So like we talked about last week.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So they wrote what the trigger was, and then what the customer did in response to that trigger, and then what strategies were used, and I suppose the time frame in terms of how long it took the customer to settle using those strategies. Yeah.
That's exactly what we've been practicing. That's fabulous. So quick factual notes first, then formal progress notes in Lumery after. So do you remember any of the wording or the type of language they used, Lisa?
Yeah, it was like objective. It wasn't opinions and stuff like that. So it was like customer paced halfway, like hallway, like paced in the hallway, raise their voice, verbalise frustration about the delayed dinner, as I would. And then, staff provided reassurance, offered the choice of either waiting or going for a walk, and the customer chose to go for a walk. So, after about 15 minutes, settled, Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. So basically the documentation tells a clear story without judgment. So it didn't say that, the customer was getting aggressive or,
Yeah.
it just said exactly how it was, no judgment, really well done. So what did you learn from observing this, and what do you think you could apply within your own shifts?
Well, I learned that, obviously staying calm and, giving choices early can stop it from escalating. Sometimes in these situations, I feel like, just put yourself in their situation and go, what would I like? How would I want someone to respond to me? So, and so after that, sort of learned that documentation doesn't have to be perfect straight away either. It just has to be, like, obviously timely, because we do have time limits where you have to put documentation in, but, just for it to be factual, objective and clear, so you could use it as a learning opportunity for other staff as well.
Right, and concise. You don't want to go on and on and
No,
on
no,
about what he was wearing. Okay, perfect. So that's a really strong takeaway, Lisa. If you could pick one skill from what you observed that you want to practice this week, what would it be?
I think, to prevent someone from escalating beyond, like really offering choices sooner rather than later. So just that coming to the forefront. Okay, what can I do? What can I offer to get, to de-escalate quickly?
Absolutely. So without jumping on it and trying to fix it in a calm way, just picking up on the escalation and absolutely, that's great. So I want to connect what you observed back to our positive behaviour. I've forgotten the word.
The principles.
Yes, the principles. And focus on understanding the function of behaviour, not just stopping it. So when a customer escalates, they're often communicating a need. It may be frustration, fear, or sensory overload, maybe something else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when staff slow down and use calm language, giving them space, they're responding to the need, not just the behaviour. Okay? So how do you think that approach supports dignity and respect?
Well, that approach, for me, it's same as anyone, treats that customer like a person, not a problem. So they, when you treat someone like a person, you want to make them feel heard. Like in that video we just saw.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is person-centred practice. So now let's talk about documentation, because this is where a lot of confidence gets lost. Now, when you're writing a behaviour note, what do you think its main purpose is?
To explain what happened,
Yes,
to let other people know what happened.
and to communicate clearly with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So let's practice together. If someone writes, the customer was aggressive, what's the risk with that sort of wording?
Well, it sounds more like someone's opinion, and it could be more like interpreted differently.
Exactly. Instead, we describe observable behaviour. So can you give me an example of an objective description?
Yeah. So
Write that in a different format.
Yeah. So, the customer raised their voice and paced the room for 5 minutes.
Sure. Perfect. That's excellent. Clear, factual and professional. So now that we've talked about challenges and reflection, I want to focus a bit more on documentation, especially when you're under pressure. Can you walk me through what usually happens for you after a challenging incident, step by step?
Okay, so usually once the customer is settled, there are obviously still other customers to support. Because more often than not, you have more than one person to work with.
Yeah.
So then, towards the end of the shift, I realise I haven't yet written my notes, and so at that stage, I start to feel a bit rushed.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that end of shift pressure is very real. When I was doing regular shifts, I used to say that documentation was the last emotional task of the shift.
Yeah.
You're tired, but you still have to be precise.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels.
So let's do a quick role play. I'll describe a situation and you tell me what you might write. Not perfectly, just instinctively. Okay?
Okay.
So a customer becomes distressed after a change in routine, raises their voice, refuses medication and paces the hallway for several minutes before settling after staff provide space and reassurance. What's the first thing you'd be tempted to write? Quickly, off the top of your head.
Well, probably customer was upset and refused medication.
Absolutely. And that's a very common starting point. And it's not wrong, but we can strengthen it. We can build on it. So let's slow down and make it objective. What did you actually see?
Well, they were pacing the hallway and clenching their fists.
Good. What did you hear?
They raised their voice and said they didn't want the medication.
Perfect. And what did you do?
I spoke calmly.
Mm-hmm.
I gave them some space and I followed the behaviour support plan.
Exactly. So under pressure, even writing dot points like pacing hallway, clenched fist, raised voice, refused medication when offered, staff provided space and calm verbal reassurance, customer settled after approximately 10 minutes. That protects you and supports positive behaviour support review.
Yeah, that feels much clearer and obviously a lot less emotional.
So that's the goal. Documentation isn't about justifying yourself. It's about creating a shared understanding for the whole team.
Awesome. A lot of people should learn that.
Absolutely. That's what we're trying to get through. Something else that really helped me was using the team around me. Have you ever checked your documentation with a senior staff member?
No. And often because of, time, but I usually just submit it and hope it's okay. But I suppose having someone read over it may kind of help me, do it better or, clarify that it is okay. And it might also assist them as well.
Absolutely. And that's my point in this as well. It also doesn't necessarily need to be a senior staff member, but a competent one. So your seniors or practice leaders or, experienced support workers are there to support consistency. So reviewing notes together actually improves service and quality across the whole house.
Yeah, I think I'd feel better knowing I can actually ask.
Cool. So internally, we've also got access to People Hub, which has short modules on documentation, standards and medication safety. And those are great refreshers when you're unsure, as is the customer's positive behaviour support plan.
Yeah, I have a look at those. Yeah.
So externally, resources like NDIS worker orientation module reinforce why accurate, respectful documentation matters, not just for compliance, but for customer dignity and rights.
Yeah, that helps put it into perspective. Yeah.
So I also want to highlight something important here. You're already doing many things right. The mentoring isn't about fixing gaps, it's about aligning your confidence with your capacity.
Yeah, I think I really do underestimate myself sometimes, as a lot of us do.
Most reflective workers do. The aim is for you to finish a shift thinking, I handled that pretty professionally and my documentation reflected exactly what happens.
Yeah, that would make a big difference to how I actually feel at work.
So for the next week, I'd like you to intentionally apply one positive behaviour support strategy you've observed, maybe slowing your pace or using neutral language, or make use of jotting down some dot points. After your shift, write a short reflection, what worked, what didn't, and how you felt. Treat it like a brainstorming exercise. So just go blur. Don't overthink it, just jot it down.
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool. You're building really strong skills here, Lisa. This is real progress.
Awesome, thank you.
So before we wrap up today, I'd like us to revisit your goals and think about how you can keep the momentum going between sessions. What ideas do you have that might help you stay on track over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I was thinking it might help if I did short reflections every day, like not anything long, but just a few minutes at the end of my shift if I have time.
That's a great idea. Can you tell me more about what those reflections might look like?
I'd probably just think about one thing that that worked well, and then one thing I found challenging, especially if there was like a behaviour incident or something tricky, particularly with documentation. I could just reflect on what I did and what I might have done differently, like next time. Yeah.
That's an excellent strategy, and it'll keep everything regular and continuing. So short, regular reflection is often more effective than trying to remember everything at the end of the week. And how do you think that might help your confidence?
I think it would actually help me notice progress rather than just kind of focusing on mistakes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I actually forget that I've handled situations really well, because I then, you move kind of straight on to the next task. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that awareness is really important. Reflection isn't about criticism, it's about recognising learning as it happens. You also mentioned earlier that you sometimes feel unsure about your documentation. Any thoughts on how to support yourself there?
Just what we were talking about earlier, I thought I could ask more for peer feedback, like just checking in with a senior or a practice leader after a shift and just asking if my notes are on the right track. Yeah.
That's a great idea and shows real initiative. So what would make it easier for you to ask for that feedback, Lisa?
Well, I just think knowing that it's okay to ask and that it's about learning, not being judged. So if I frame it in a way as wanting to improve rather than feeling that it's, judgmental and intimidating, because if you just want to improve a skill, that makes it feel like it's less intimidating rather than sort of admitting to, I don't know things or I'm not good at things. Like it's a learning opportunity, I suppose.
Absolutely. It's a bit like the glass half full or glass half empty.
Yeah.
Exactly. Seeking feedback is a professional strength and not a weakness. Peer feedback also helps create consistency across the team, which benefits everyone, not just you.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would also help me to. Oh, excuse me. Understand.
Sorry, we're nearly done,
It's been a
Lisa.
late night. You know, just to understand what good documentation actually looks like in practice. You know.
Absolutely. So if we summarise your ideas, you'll use short daily reflections to build awareness and confidence, and you'll seek peer feedback to strengthen your documentation and your positive behaviour support practice. Are you feeling confident about committing to these actions before our next session?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident. I think they're both realistic and manageable, and not too overwhelming. I think, you know, if there's just a little bit to do, you can then fit that in at each shift or whatever. So, yeah.
Excellent. That's exactly what we're aiming for, sustainable progress. Your engagement in this goal revision activity really shows that the mentoring process is helping build both your capability and your confidence.
Yeah, thank you. I actually feel more motivated now than I did even at the start of this session. So, yeah.
That's great to hear, Lisa. From my perspective, you've been receptive, reflective, and very committed to your development today, other than the yawns, but it's okay. If you continue with this approach, you'll be in a strong position to achieve your goals before our final session. Excuse me.
Stop it. Can't help it. Sorry, but you know, thanks for that. I do need to get to bed earlier at night because we're having really early mornings at the moment. But I do feel much clearer about what I do need to focus on now. So, thank you.
Excellent. You're doing really well, Lisa. We'll keep building on this in our next session. Have a great week and reach out if you need.
You will do.